Well, hey, it's Luskos, and we are so glad that you are here with us.
Yes. Welcome back. It's a great day.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Jennifer Lusko, we are on episode number 78.
Man.
Moving along.
It's a good number.
Like a ship through the sea, the spray of the salt. And today on the podcast, we have Ben Stuart.
Man, he's such a great
guy. Ben Stuart is an old soul. He's a wise man.
And he's so funny and so kind. And
it's wry. He's got a wry sense of humor.
And his voice is just like oaky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. It's got a smoky quality to it. He's fabulous. He's the author of the brand new book, Rest and War, Rhythms of a Well-Fought Life. He and Donna pastor Passion City, DC, and they are just fun. Every time we see, they're the kind of people, you see and you're just like, oh, good, this is going to be a good hang.
Yes.
Let's get nachos. That's what I think of when I see Ben. Let's get nachos. Let's hang.
Tacos.
You always want more time with them. We were at a situation. We found out we were roommates with them in the house we were all staying in. And I was just so excited. Like, I was like, yes, we hit the roommate jackpot with Ben and Donna.
Yes.
And so I'm really grateful that we would get to spend this time with him. I think especially if you lead on any capacity in business, in the sports world and education, if you're leading and you have a high amount of drive, this will be an important episode for you to figure out how to temper that with a sustainable cadence of recovery, which is every time your heart's not beating, it's recovering. So if your life doesn't have that push-pull, then you will not make it the long term. So this is an episode that will help you get a taste of a message that will help you 30 years from now, 50 years from now, to not be looking back with like regrets, like, oh, dang, when I was in my 30s, I was hitting it so hard. I didn't put into place the sort of, recovery, tempo that could help me make it to where I want to go.
Yeah. And if you're able to, I would say have a notepad with you or open up your phone and take some notes, because there's some beautiful little nuggets. And they have a daughter named Sparrow. And I just think that's the sweetest.
It's a great little name.
So sweet.
It's fantastic. Well, listen, enjoy, drink deeply. This is one of the wise ones. Listen to this conversation with our friend, Ben Stuart. Ben Stuart, welcome to Hey, it's the Luskos. Look at you gratuitously pointing to my book.
What? Oh no, I just have that up there.
Also, if you angle yourself just right, it looks like you are on the cross.
Oh my God.
A little bit.
What?
If you go just a little higher.
Wow.
Like that shelf becomes the upper T.
Oh gosh, yeah. Wow.
I know Jesus said, pick up the cross and follow me.
That's why I did it. It's funny you bring that up. It's a martyrdom complex. No, I've never thought that. That's wild.
But it really looks good on the white brick. I will say that. Those of you listening can't see this. That's some good looking brick right there.
It's a cool backdrop.
Is this in the doll factory house? Is that where we are?
I am sitting in what was a doll factory. Yes. Shelves upon shelves of porcelain doll heads, hair, hands that had been left for 20 years.
Wow.
To age poorly. And so Donna and I threw them out, and here we are.
Just one of the many things that are great about your new book is that you tell the story of you living in a doll factory, a former doll factory.
Yeah.
Wow. Why didn't they take them down?
You know him. I took a buddy down here when we were like just considering buying this house, and I didn't even think about it. It was Halloween.
Oh my gosh.
It was at night. And we were downstairs with a flashlight. I was just like, hey, man, I got to get this thing out of the garage. And I'm walking around. And he was like, I got to get out of here. Like, what is like, he was like, this is like, what? I didn't prepare him at all. I wasn't thinking.
Oh, my gosh.
It's Halloween.
Terrifying.
You're in.
You need preparation for something like that.
You're in an abandoned doll factory, a.k.a. your home, where you're going to be sleeping. And you're moving thousands upon thousands of doll heads and hair, doll hair.
Yeah.
This wasn't a hoarder. This was a doll manufacturer.
Yeah, beautiful porcelain dolls. I mean, she made them for like dignitaries, back before they were terrifying. They were in high demand, and she was very talented and a wonderful woman. But yeah, porcelain dolls left alone.
Why? Okay, when she left, why did they not take the dolls with her? Why did they leave them?
She went to care for her aging parents. Her husband had passed. She went to care for an aging dad, moved to the farm, and then the years just went by, and she just never really came back here. And it was kind of a wild story, man, because she wasn't sure what to do with this place. You know, DC's expensive, man. I mean, it's crazy to live here. And, but this lady had this house. People were begging her to buy it, but they were all going to tear it down. She didn't want to tear it down. And then we met her, and, you know, it was months into the relationship. We didn't, you know, we were just trying to get to know her, and she was like, I think God sent you to help me let go of this. She was like, I wanted it to have a good story. She was like, the best memories of my life happened in that house. And to think your children will grow up there, you'll build memories there. She's like, I think I didn't want it torn down. And so it feels cool to walk around here. Like the house feels like a story of redemption. Wow. That's why I put it in the book. You know, it's just like, it's a redemption story. New life has swept in. It really has. And, it's great, man.
That's beautiful. Wow. I'm not done talking about dolls, though. The dolls. You said 3 dumpsters full of dolls.
No.
Yeah. And we found I have a copy of Last of the Mohicans from the 1800s.
That's cool.
This is a history of the United States written before the Civil War. Wow. Can you imagine?
And you found it in the house.
They're just like, well, everything seems good. Nothing exciting going on. And you're like, man, it's about to go nuts. And this was down in the basement. So all this cool stuff, a lot of it had been damaged. We had to throw away, but.
She didn't want them. You were like, hey, I found 3 dumpsters worth of dolls. Do you want those? And she was like, nah.
We asked her so many times. So these old records, we're like, do you want these? And she's like, no, I'm really good.
Yeah.
We're like, all right.
Do you think the dolls could have been sold on eBay?
Not the ones that were here. This was the island of the misfit dolls. These were the ones that had been left, busted out eyes. You know, think about the first Toy Story. Like,
okay, so it's Sid's lair. Guys. It's Sid's lair. He's got the tarantula legs.
100. Yeah, but take that and make it a warehouse, not a kid's house. That's what I'm saying. It was another level.
When do you think in world history, like when did dolls become such a synonym for fear? Because they are just such a nightmarish. You know, the creepy face, especially
the movies.
A broken doll.
Probably
we did it to clowns. Remember clowns used to make people happy? Yeah.
Now they're just symbols of all of our nightmares. Do you have any irrational fears like that?
Irrational fears I don't know, man. That's a good question.
Or they could be rational.
It's pretty irrational to be afraid of a doll, right? I mean, that's not a rational fear. That's more of
That's why it didn't mess with me. Like being down here, I'm like, these things aren't real. The only time I got messed up was there was like a perfect human hand made out of wax that had fingernails. So it wasn't a porcelain doll. When I saw that, I was like, all right, I don't feel comfortable.
And it's on Halloween. You're like, I'm a pastor. I know the truth about the spiritual world. This is freaking me out.
But see, that's the thing, man. Like when I was a kid and was scared of things under the bed, I would jump under the bed. I was like, all right, then let's just do this. I would just jump under there. So when they're like, hey, the downstairs is dolls, I was like, well, I know Jesus, and
I'm just going to jump down there.
Let's go. Like, I'm just like, we're going to take it.
Yeah.
We're going to take it on.
Yeah. We're storming the hill.
And,
wow.
But what I can't do is awkward, man. I'll tell you, if you want to see Ben run, put on a talent show at camp.
Oh.
I can't do awkward.
Not going to do the juggling.
Like when I see people someone hadn't told them they can't sing, or like dancing's not their gift.
Or they can whistle out of their belly button or something.
I just have I can't do it, man.
Yeah.
I leave so fast.
Do you have a phobia of any kind?
Phobia of any kind? I don't know.
Like I'm really allergic.
We're going really deep.
I'm scared to death of snakes. Probably rationally to a degree because they're scary and dangerous, but also irrationally because like if you brought a gardener snake, I still wouldn't want to get near it. And I know that's fine.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't want to touch it.
I don't think I have. You know what's funny though is I do get like a weird social anxiety sometimes. Like I'm not scared of people. I'm pro people, but every now and again it hits me like I used to wait tables, and I'd be in the kitchen and suddenly be terrified of going out to talk to the table, and I was like, it wasn't rational. I was like, this is my job. They're expecting me. They actually want me to go, but I'm like, why am I? Something about initiating this relationship is freaking me out. And I've never really fully understood that. I should probably be processing that in counseling.
I get that sometimes.
This is a safe space. Just want to let you know.
I get that sometimes. How long were you a server and where?
I did it all through college. I mean, I had a lot of jobs in college. I painted, I mowed lawns, but I waited tables probably more than anything. I waited tables at a Mexican food restaurant in Houston, lost a bunch of weight, just sweating, carrying fajitas and margaritas at this outdoor spot. And then worked at this restaurant for some dear family friends all through college, but loved it. Like people ask me all the time, like, where'd you learn ministry? And I'm like, waiting tables, because you have to serve someone, even if they're not nice.
It's in your job title.
You just have to learn to serve them.
I am a server.
You have to serve when you don't feel like it. And so all that, I learned so much about pushing through limits, but I was so glad when I hung that apron up. I prayed over it. I took it off, and then this fear hit me that I'd be back one day. And I was like, no. I'm like, Lord, just
get thee behind me.
Okay, but do you have nightmares or dreams about like serving?
Being in the weeds, 3-6 tops.
Yeah, she says.
I do.
She does.
I have nightmares.
Because she worked at Macaroni Grill, and she would.
Oh no!
She would have these dreams. She would wake up and be like, "I got sat like 4 tables simultaneously. They were all big parties. Super mad. Trying to write my name in crayon upside down and remember how to sing Happy Birthday in Italian.
Yes, that's true.
Can you still do it?
Happy Birthday in Italian?
No.
You still remember it?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Well, I would have to think about it. That was like
search the recesses of your brain.
Years ago.
What, 20?
Tanti aguti ati.
All right, we're gonna work on that, Ben. How long do we have till your birthday?
I used to do that. And I was the only, the Mexican food restaurant, I was the only white guy. They called me Ricky Martin. They thought it was hilarious that I worked there. And, but they would always sing this beautiful song in Spanish, and I would fake it. And they would never teach me the words because they thought it was funny.
Oh my gosh.
Like,
where is Ricky Martin in the world today? You never hear about him anymore.
I'm not sure.
Living the Vida Loca.
He's making good choices, but we can pray for him.
We don't know. We don't know. We can't judge him. We have no idea where he is. Everybody's somewhere. Isn't that a freaky thought? Like when David Crowder posted that he sat next to Vanilla Ice on an airplane, it made me realize like everybody's somewhere all the time. Oh, we have an update on Ricky Martin. All right. His most recent photo, he seems to have posted shirtless. Still in relatively good shape. I'm not going to lie. He's aged well.
Wow. He's got to be what, 50s?
Active since 84. Born in 71. Yeah. So we're gonna monitor the situation. We'll bring you reports periodically.
I love that you have a guy
throughout the day.
Whoever.
Well, we just gotta live Googling is a big cornerstone of this show. Ben, we need to just delve more into the story of you a little bit more. You're obviously living in DC now. You referenced that, but you were born and raised in Texas.
Yes. Yeah. Born in Austin, raised in Houston. Texas whole life till we moved here. A little stop in Atlanta.
Yeah, right. Do you see the world through the lens of a Texan? Do you feel like that? Can you take the boy out of Texas, but not Texas out of the boy?
100%. Yeah, I think I tell people you're never more Texan than when you leave Texas. Because when I lived there, I'm like, yeah, it's nice, but I could live anywhere. And now I'm like, have cowboy hats in my house. I'm like, when did this become what I do?
That's hilarious.
So I have all kinds of Texas stuff around. Yeah. I mean, I love living here. I love DC, but.
Yeah, I want to talk about your love of DC, but I do want to just kind of get into the head of a Texan. I feel like every opportunity I have to get into that scary, mysterious place is worthwhile of, just the Texan mindset. It is a nation all unto itself. Like, what's your favorite thing about Texas?
Oh my gosh, man. Wow. I just read one of the best books I've ever read, Levi, Empire of the Summer Moon. It's about when the Comanches were in Texas, and it's just story after story of like Texas Rangers, Comanches, pioneers, priests, and just they would collide, and sometimes it would go very poorly, and sometimes they'd become friends. But in the middle of all that, you see, like, if there was a problem, you got to figure it out. Like, there's no one coming to save you. There's no one coming to help you. And so it's interesting. I'm reading this. I'm like, that is so Texan. And just like see it getting into the DNA of like, we do what we have to do to get it done. Like that sort of toughness mentality. I'm like, I love that. I'm like, I realized I love that about us. And that goes way back.
Well, I know what book you're going to be reading next.
No, I've read that. It's a great book.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a fabulous book. Does your whole family still live in Texas?
Oddly enough, no, because we're all such deep Texans. But my brother's over here on the East Coast, and my sister's in Alaska.
Now, I've heard Austin called basically Portland that it happens to be in Texas. So how much of Austin is Texas versus
Give us
it just
the real
happens
story.
to be in Texas?
Yeah, it's what do they call it? The blueberry and the tomato soup. It's the more liberal city and a conservative.
That's a funny statement and a disgusting menu item.
Kind of, right?
Yeah.
But I like growing up. Austin was wild, music scene, and it's just a different place, quirky. But the art's beautiful, the food's great, and the hill country's the most gorgeous part of Texas. So,
and there's lots of lakes out there, right?
Yeah, you got all these lakes in the hills that you want to be outside. And so it has that feel that like when you're in Portland or Seattle where you're like, you want to be outdoors, but there's also like cool places to eat.
And it's such a
cool
food city. It seems like Austin's just like a never ending food, arts, music.
That's what I miss the most is the tacos, man. I've eaten the best food I've ever had in my life in DC. There's Michelin star restaurants everywhere, but you cannot get a taco up here, man.
For whatever reason.
I don't understand how those haven't
Not
made
one
it here.
single taco.
Not a single
Not
taco.
a good one. No.
That is so funny. Okay, so
it's mind blowing.
You grew up in Austin, and then did you go to college in Houston, or did you also grow up in Houston?
No. Yeah, I moved to Houston when I was like elementary school, and then went to Texas A&M for college, which is kind of right in the middle of Texas, near Austin, near Houston, right in the center. Real different vibe. It was a military school.
Wow.
That became not one. So when I was there, it wasn't a military school, but it has a lot of that military
What
DNA
branch of the
to it.
military was it? Or is that how it works? I guess I don't really know.
You would enter, it's called the Corps of Cadets. It's like an ROTC, but it's way bigger than that, but
that's how it started, but it's not still that way anymore.
Yeah, it started early. I mean, there's a lot of the student center is called the Memorial Student Center. And when you go in there, it's just one story after another of Medal of Honor winners from Texas A&M, because basically the school emptied at World War II. And so you can just watch and read the stories of what these guys did. It's amazing. It's an inspirational place at school. But I was really
is that an acronym, or is does the A&M stand for something?
Yeah, agricultural and mechanical. So it started as an ag school. So, UT, that's where UT would make fun of A&M because all the Aggie jokes were about, Aggies don't know how to do anything, kind of had a reputation of being dumb. And you don't hear those jokes anymore because A&M sort of transcended all that, but now all those are safe.
Okay, so you went to school that wasn't a military school, but it was before.
Yeah.
But then I heard that you completed a Navy SEAL obstacle course. How is that? You need to tell us the story.
Yeah, well, I, through unique circumstances. As one does, got to know some guys that are in the teams and went out to the West Coast, Coronado, and got on base. And one of them was working as an instructor at the time. And he was like, he didn't even tell me. We got there and he was like, hey, man, and like, hey, put this on. I'm like, all right. So we changed in the clothes and he's like, all right, hey, I want you to run this. I'm like, oh, all right.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And I couldn't do, it's wild. Like some of it's, you can imagine obstacle course, like climb this rope. But then some of it was like, it's those big thick ropes. There was one where you'd have to climb these 3-story high thing and shoot down on these ropes. But we didn't have a corpsman, so he wouldn't let me do it. So they had a rope that just ran parallel with the ground. But you lay on top of the rope and drop your legs down and you pull yourself across. It's a real, there was stuff like that was just bizarre, stuff you wouldn't think about. Yeah. Physically you have to do.
And would they be like, hey, here's what you need to do? Like,
went to the East Coast and did the East Coast obstacle course.
Were they giving you like, hey, here's what you do?
He'd give me, yeah, he would, but he made me run it first. But yeah, he would kind of talk me through it. Like he walked me through, here's how you negotiate this, here's how you negotiate that. But then the same guy, we did the East Coast one, which is over a pool. And you swing from the high dive to a net. And he said, hey, if you try to Tarzan swing, you'll hit the water. He said, you have to jump, kick your feet up so that you're swinging backwards and upside down.
Oh my gosh. And
as the rope crests, you'll be looking up, release, and it'll throw you into the net. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. Yeah. So it was, he would always teach me stuff like that, the stuff that you're like, that makes no sense. And then you're like, oh no, It does. It's just scary.
Sounds like American Ninja Warrior style.
Yeah, but much worse.
Wait, so you did a West Coast
Much
one
like
and an East Coast one?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
And you
did.
finished them?
I finished the West Coast one. That's the one you go through to get into buds.
Oh
like
my
when you're doing
gosh.
so you have to do that one. The East Coast one, I don't know if anyone can finish. It's just ropes over a pool till your forearms give out. It's
Oh my
a
gosh.
nightmare.
It's not if you fail, it's when, or yeah.
Yeah. It has to be. But the East Coast one, guys run and run through it. And so I did it. And, there's a minimum qual time of like 12 minutes. And I got right under that, which I didn't even know. So, I was
you
super happy about
qualified technically
Wow.
to be a Navy SEAL. Just backup plans.
it. I don't know that I would say, but there's a minimum qualification to even be considered.
For that
Yes.
one aspect, yes.
For
Check.
that, yes. To be clear, no stolen honor. But then
No stolen
he ran it in less than 6 minutes, and he would walk between the obstacles. He would just walk and then attack it and then walk the next. I'm like, okay, that's what a SEAL looks like. So
Dang.
I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I finished it. But I'm built to read books.
That's
That's how
hilarious.
God made me.
And to write them. And that story is one of the many stories that is in this book, Brand New Beauty, that I'm holding. This matte black beauty.
It is beautiful.
Rest in War. Gold and black, Jenny's two favorite colors right there. Look at that thing. Shimmering in the sun. This book just released in February. So as people are listening to this, it's about a month out from this release. Ben, how do you feel having this out in the world?
I feel grateful and a tremendous sense of relief. This was, these were things I'd been thinking about for 20 years of just how to, in my own life, how to struggle well, and then how to articulate and help people as well. And so to actually have it done is just, I feel an enormous gratitude. Thank you, Lord. I lived long. I made it to the point I could write this, and thank you that I was able to. And I'm just so grateful it's done. It was hard for me because I just cared so much and wanted to put everything I had into it.
So this was...
I got to tell you something funny though, Jenny. When I was talking with our publisher early on, I had always just called it The Fight, like in my mind. And I was like, what if we called it The Fight to Flourish?
That's
He's
funny.
like, I don't know. Let me think about it. And 2 weeks later, we got your book. And I was like, oh.
Wow.
No way.
That's terrible.
I knew
No
that was a good
way.
title.
That is so crazy.
I texted him a picture and I said, I knew it was a good title.
Yeah, it's so funny. It is a good title. But Rest in War is great too.
I love
So
that.
does this feel like a life message for you? I mean, you've alluded to that in the acknowledgments. You talk about how you preached some of this stuff in raw form back at Breakaway back in the day, because you graduated from, for those listening who don't know your story, you graduated from A&M, but then you went on to lead this college ministry at Breakaway that became the largest college Bible study in the country. And that's kind of where the seeds of this talk came from.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I had a mentor right at that time as I was stepping into leading this ministry. I had a mentor who was transitioning to a different ministry in life. And I was just celebrating him like, man, you had this long season of faithfulness where you ministered to thousands. You had made such a difference in their lives. I'm like, how does it feel? And he said, I'm just glad I made it. I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? He was like, man, I'm glad I didn't fool around with some girl. I'm glad I didn't punch a kid. And I'm like, what are you saying? I'm like, you've preached some of the best messages I've ever heard. You've impacted the lives of thousands. What are you talking about? And then my first 5 years at Breakaway, I watched 5 guys I know fall out of ministry because of moral failure.
Mm-hmm.
I saw 2 mentors of mine have emotional breakdowns and have to take long seasons off. And then for my own self, I didn't break morally or emotionally, but I broke physically. I'd carry all the stress in my body. And I realized, oh, that's what he means. Like, we're here to accomplish a mission, but there's a survival element too of like, Lord, how do we struggle well in life?
Yeah.
We're made to know you, make you known, but life is very hard. It beats you down. How do we struggle well in this life? And I began to process for myself how to do this. And then meantime, I'm trying to help college students. So yeah, this became a thing that I was working out in my own life. And then I would start to minister to pastors, students. This grew out of real world pastoral care.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot. And I feel like it does really hurt. You start to look around, you go, oh, guys I started out with, people I've known, like when they start falling by the wayside and, going down there, that is a sobering thought, because, maybe early on, people who have failed are all people way older, way long. You're reading about something that's a long time ago, but when it starts hitting close to home, that's a little tougher.
Yeah.
And your own flaws, and your own, and you start to realize, oh, I have some deep flaws that aren't easily fixed. And am I going to face them or am I going to hide them? And you go, okay, life's hard and I want to make it. I want to make it. Yeah. I want to be at the end standing. And I think watching mentors of mine, people that shaped me, fail made me go, I have to take seriously that sin is real. There's an enemy that wants to take us out. So without shaming anybody, how do we be strategic in overcoming our besetting sins, our struggles? And it became a serious thing for me.
So helpful.
When you say you started to feel physically, in the book you referenced breaking your back as one part of it. Walk us through what that means, because I think that's maybe an under-recognized form of burnout, where you can fail emotionally, you can fail morally, you can, fail spiritually, surely, but you don't often hear about somebody being broken down, physically, the toll that it takes just to keep running a race.
Yeah. It's interesting. When I moved here to DC, I wanted to meet some people to just learn the city. And I met a guy that works in the media that has lived here a long time. And I said, man, tell me about DC. And he said, it's a bunch of people with father wounds that are complete workaholics because they're trying to get a sense of acceptance from what they do, but they're deeply hurting. And I was like, man, I thought he was going to tell me about like coffee shops or something. I'm like, this has gotten deep. And I was like, what a bunch of weird guys. And then you realize like ministry's full of us too. I'm like, oh, I think I might be one of them. Like, whoops.
Right.
And so, you do ministry because you love the Lord. There's a purity to it. For me, like the book's not to ministers, but my story is like, you go into ministry to you want to love people, serve them, you want to use your gifts, whatever field you go into. But then I realized, but I'm also using it to get acceptance or feel good. And so then I'm working 50, 60, 70 hours. I never want to stop. I don't know how to stop. I don't want to stop. I like going hard. And I realized I was doing that. I was taking good things and not accepting the rest part, of resting in the Lord's love for me, resting and being still with him and being loved by him. And I could push through and develop disciplines to keep me away from moral failure. But, the body keeps score. And so I would carry stress in my body. But I thought, well, I'll just work out more, or I'll just run harder, or you can't stop me. That kind of, I got broad shoulders sticking on my back, I'll carry it.
Right.
And at some point your body lets you know, hey, we don't want to do this anymore. And so for me, I would have never thought that, well, what's going to happen, Ben, is you're going to blow a disc out.
Gosh.
But over time I realized my lifestyle was setting me up for a physical breakdown. And so when I was literally laid out on the floor for like a month, there was a physical rehabilitation, but it was definitely like an emotional and a spiritual journey the Lord had me on too, of like, hey, I am going to make you lay down in green pastures so I can restore your soul. You're not going to do it. I'm going to make you do it.
And that's what he does sometimes. And sometimes we need that. We need him to just kind of like, I just imagine the shepherd with the sheep and like literally him just like pushing the sheep down. Like, you are actually just going to rely right there. I felt the same when I broke my ankle in 2020. I feel that exact same thing was like, okay, God, you're making me lie down. So what do you want? What do you want for me? What do you want me to learn from this? Like, but sometimes we need that. We need him just to be our Lord and our shepherd and just force us to get some rest. That's so crazy though.
And you see it all through the Bible, like it's not a harsh command in the Old Testament where he's like, take a day off.
Yeah, right. Something
like
as
when you were slaves,
that.
You didn't get to.
Yeah.
So he's like, take a day off and just enjoy life. And they couldn't do it. That's the one they broke first, always. And he's like, I'll kill you if you don't take your day off. How about that? And they still wouldn't do it. And then finally, when they went up to Babylon, he's like, now at least the land will get a break because y'all don't know how to stop. And so you go, and y'all are like this. You run with the lions, fly with the eagles, you move fast. And sometimes that rest part's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that was one aspect. And I like that what you lay out is rhythms. It's not just any one thing. It's not just, here's this over here. We're all rest or we're all, work. It's that push and pull. It's that surge and then recover. And that's kind of what you're kind of making the case for, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I ran a marathon when I was in my 20s. And
you have to give Jenny some tips on that. She's gearing up for her first half marathon.
Half marathon, yes.
Oh my gosh, I will give you the best tips. So this lady that was training us told us cut straws into like a third. Well, they probably have better tech than this. Never mind. You probably have some cool water bottles, but this was back in the day. So we would cut up these straws because you get those little cups of water. Trying to drink a cup of raw
while running
run was impossible, and it would put air bubbles in your stomach. So she's like, carry little cut pieces of straws. And she's like, when you grab your cup, crush it around the straw and you can drink leisurely and never break stride.
Whoa.
And the thought of never breaking stride, I'm like, 100, I'm doing that. And so my wife and I, or my sister and I, our little straws crushing, but then I dropped the straws, just slipped out of my
Where
hands.
did it go? No
And
way.
I decided then I'll just run the rest. I don't need water. And so I collapsed with 1 mile left, I hit the ground. Like forehead hit my knees.
No.
Like I didn't fall forward. I like spiraled.
Oh my gosh.
I ended up finishing, but it was super hot and I dehydrated. And I realized at that moment, I got a worse time because I didn't stop.
Dang.
I should have paused, gotten a drink of water, walked for 100 yards. And then jogged it in. But instead, I had to sit there with the ER dude for 45 minutes, an hour, because my refusal to stop, it's like, you're going to pay for it later. Better to learn it in a rhythm than have to learn it in a rehab.
Wow.
And,
wow.
What a
and that's
real
ministry
picture.
for me. That's
the difference in like the mentality, even like with tithing. It's like, I think Warren Wiersbe, who said, like, if you don't give that tithe, it'll leave your hands somehow or another because God's laid claim to it. He's like, whether it goes to the dishwasher repairman or the increase you didn't get or, whatever, like, it's not like you get to keep it. So not giving God his Sabbath, it's not like it's at the end of your life, it's all going to be out in the wash, whether you gave that day or it was, you ended up in recovery or whatever.
Well, that's when I went down with my back and it was really serious. Like, the doctors were like, hey, you may not be able to walk. You won't be able to hold your baby.
Yeah, because Donna was pregnant at the time, right?
She was pregnant at the time, and I was in the doctor's office, and I was like, "Well, how fast can you fix this? Because our ministry launches in 2 weeks."
Oh my God!
And he was like, "Hey, man, I need to acclimate you to where you're at." Like he was just like, "You're not hearing me," and that's when he pointed at Donna. He's like, "You can't help her." He said, "You can't hold that baby." He said, "I'm not clear you're going to walk again because you're a bad candidate for surgery because I had injured my back previously." He's like, and I can't fix you. And he wasn't a religious person, but he was like, you just need to hope your back heals itself. He said, that's really all you have right now. And like room spinning, like, you can't be serious. So I went home and, had to lay on the floor for a month and then got into this physical therapist. And I had to kind of give everything away ministry wise. And I would lay on this table with all these like 70 and 80-year-olds and do like the most basic, but it was hours of stillness, just awareness of my body, awareness of my thoughts. And I thought exactly what you just said, Levi. I'm like, I could have given this to the Lord 1 day a week, an hour every morning. I could have been in the stillness with my Father. He's getting every minute. And I need this. I need this. And I'm like, ooh, but I would rather do it.
Rather give it than have it taken.
Yeah. I'd
like
rather not
those
do this
490 years.
Wow.
Those 490 years in Babylon. You're like, dude, we could have just parceled out that.
We could have been.
The
doing
years of
barbecues
Jubilee
in the
were
land.
great. It would have been nice. Yeah. It just shows you father
yeah.
knows best, right? And that's what you're making the case for. And I love how you present it. There's a lot of books. This topic of anxiousness and this topic of rest is it's not that everyone's piling in on it. It is a pervasive issue. So of course, God's speaking in stereo through a lot of people on it. But the way you present it, and I love that you actually come out and say it. You're like, I don't actually like the language spiritual disciplines, and how it can turn into what you call listianity, which, is following Jesus through a grid of a list. And so you talk to me about the life-giving, and because that I think is what you set out to do, and what I really think comes across.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think, Paul obviously had to warn against it with the Philippians. And he's like, look, there's this attraction to mimicking all these Jewish laws because you get a hit off like, I did it. And then I'm successful at it. And I followed my list and I feel proud. But then on the ugly flip side, if I don't follow my list, I feel shame. And, a lot of us have done that. And you go, that is not the point. That was never the goal. Paul told Timothy, the goal of our instruction is love. So I tell people, I'm like, if the way you're reading the Bible, if it's not becoming love, you're doing it wrong. You've messed it up. It's become some other thing. And
you got Jenny over here taking notes, bro. You're taking us to church today, baby. No, it's a good episode when Jenny starts taking notes. I'm telling you.
Okay. Well, there's a tendency to do that where you start to put the spiritual life in the same category you put like exercise. Oh, I did it so I can check a box, or I did it and I feel good about myself. I'm a disciplined person.
Yeah.
Like, well, that wasn't the goal either.
Yeah.
My goal in taking Donna on a date isn't so I can be a good husband, so y'all can think I'm a good husband, so I can fulfill some duty. You're like, no, the goal is to cultivate the intimacy we've covenanted to enjoy.
Great.
A rhythmic date night aids in that. It's not a guarantee, but it's a regular opportunity to invest in and enjoy this relationship. And that's what I'm trying to get to help people, is to see, I'm not advocating a list of rules. I'm not advocating. I didn't like the language spiritual disciplines because it makes it sound like,
it's got
I don't want to tell Donna
rigidness to
Donna,
it.
we will now practice the discipline of having a date. You're like, wow, that's neat. Thank you.
It's Friday. The discipline of intercourse is on the schedule today. Right. But you do reference them. You talk about the honeymoon. You guys didn't get married and begin like, this is when I'll clean the dishwasher. You're like, no, we're going to Jamaica because we're going to get to know each other,
Yeah. Yeah. I try to make that distinction, between, I had a buddy that wanted a dog and bought a wolf. And, looks like a dog, 4 legs, fur, but it's not a dog. And when it started killing things and biting people,
dude, the rabbit hacky sack. Yeah, the red day.
Funny, man.
Wow.
I told him that story. I told him, hey, I'm going to tell this story of you. I mean, he took this wolf dog out to this park. He's trying to impress these girls. It ends up horrifically killing a bunny in front of
and he only got the attention of an old man. He wanted to get girls' attention, but he became like an old man started hitting on him.
It's one of the funniest things I've ever experienced in my life.
My gosh. You were there?
No, I was at home and he was like, I'm going to the park with this dog. I'm like, all right, man. Because this dog was crazy. And he comes back like less than an hour later. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he tells me about taking the dog out there, throwing this little tennis ball. This wolf runs right past the tennis ball. Like, that's not what I'm doing. That's what you think you're doing.
Yeah.
Because it was this park all these girls would lay out at. So he went strategically to where all the girls are laying out, brought his beautiful animal.
Cujo.
And it comes out of this bush carrying a bunny, and it would throw it in the air. And as it would try to get away, he'd pounce on it and rip into it. And it was just the funniest, it was a nightmare. And then the animal ended up liking me. And so if a girl was ever talking to me, she would slowly move around her, jump up, bite her ponytail, and pull her hair down. And then you'd have to like rip her jaws loose. You're like, this thing it's a wolf. This is not a dog. This is a wolf. You have brought a dangerous animal.
You withhold food from that thing
home
for 3 or 4 days, you're going to wake up with it chewing on you.
I'm telling you, she was awesome. She was so dangerous. And, but anyway, so I make that point of like, there's people that their religion is like, I read these books, I do this thing, I do that. And you're like, yeah, it's the same things I do, but it's all twisted and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's in the canine family. But that being said,
kind of looks like religion, but your heart is cold. That's dangerous.
So on that subject, how did you become a Jesus follower? Where did that happen on your journey?
Yeah, early on as a kid, and I tell people this all the time, my mom came to faith when she was pregnant with me. I mean, she was in a bad spot in her marriage. A high school kid had shared the gospel with her. It went very poorly. She was her teacher. My mom blew her off. But a year later, as her life was coming apart, she picked up the book this girl gave her and came to Christ.
Wow.
Watching a Jesus movie and reading this book. And then, my mom raised me to go to church and know the Lord. And it was at a vacation Bible school that I believed it, And it wasn't until high school, there was a significant moment. I had football for me was, I had to be good at it to earn the approval of my father. That was the only thing I cared about. I remember telling God, look, I will be a good kid, but leave me alone. Because I just felt like God is going to take from me the things I love. And so I remember praying that to him. Wow. I'm like, I'm going to not be a bad guy, but don't mess with me. Because I was just afraid he would. And then I broke my femur.
Oh.
So
we have that in common. That's fun.
Did you
really?
Fun?
I broke my left femur.
When?
2 years into our church plant on a snowmobile. It was terrible.
No way. Dude, that could have killed you.
Yeah, it was a bad deal.
And right before that, there was a man who did die from breaking his femur because
the guy
it hit
who
his
put me back
femoral
together, my orthopedic surgeon, not to make this about my femur, I want to hear your story. He said
Levi's
the last guy that we treated in this hospital for a femur break, same injury, snowmobile, because I had gone across a ditch. And when I landed on the two skis. And I fell across the handlebars and my femur just popped right there, like a gunshot. And I found myself lying in the snow with my leg pointed this way, realizing in my head, I'm not going to Israel next week, which was the plan. But he said the last time this happened, which was last week or whatever, the guy had broken both femurs on the handlebars and severed the femoral artery in the process and bled out in the snow in minutes before the paramedics even got there, I guess. So anyhow, what did you do to your femur?
Were there people with you or were you like crawling through the snow, like making peace with God?
No, it's actually a really terrible story. The people I was with, we were all, how like guys are, you're kind of like one person does this. You're like, okay, I can up the ante and do this.
I gotta
someone jumps and now you're jumping. Which is how all bad decisions start. So when I'm lying on the ground with my femur broken, I'm waving at them and they thought I had just done something awesome and had fallen. So they're like going like, giving the thumbs up, like, good, we see you. And my snowmobile landed on its track. So it's fine. It's just idling and I'm just waving at them and they're like, yeah, good, keep going. They keep riding. It took me some time to get them to come over and see my leg.
I'm so glad you didn't like bleed out for a million reasons, but one of them is for them, their mental health.
Yeah. They would just keep waving at me and give me the thumbs up while I die slowly.
Yeah.
Or not guys. Slowly.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but we were like, it was like a volunteer, we were in a very rural part of Montana where only volunteer paramedics come when you can get them. And they did come and they were not professionals, but I'm grateful they were there that day. Yeah. But they got me to city limits and they couldn't give me medicine or anything. So no drugs. So I'm like on this bumpy road, feeling everything, bleeding internally, of course. But then we get to the roadside to put me into another ambulance, which could take me to the hospital and then they could give me morphine. So they got me medicated. And my friend says at that point I began feeling my spirits were soaring. I don't remember any of it, but he said I started telling him about Jesus and inviting him to church and I was cracking jokes. It was a good time was had.
That is inspiring. I'm pretty sure I was cussing. They had to ask me to lower the profanity level.
Well, how did you do it? How'd you break the femur? It's a hard bone to break, I hear.
It is. Well, you know what? It's because when I played football, it was on turf. It was back in the days where it was like the old turf, the bad stuff. So
like putt golf turf, basically, right?
Yeah. So was on defense and it was actually a bad deal, man. It was after I was having the best game of my life. And it was after like I'm taking a pursuit angle because I was the cornerback and the running back had run the other direction. Saw him get tackled. I was slowing down. And some guy had in his mind, I'm going to sweep the leg on this cornerback. It was after the play. I mean, the running back's down. And this dude buried his head in my knee. And, my foot was on that turf. That turf didn't move. So my foot was on the ground. And he just snapped
his head into your knee. This is the fulcrum. And the thing that gave was the strongest, largest, longest bone in your body.
Yeah. Clean in half, severed. They showed me the X-ray and they're like, see these? They're like, that's one bone. That's supposed to be together.
Tell me,
it didn't come out of the skin.
Your immediate emotional reaction to how long did it take you to realize what had happened?
Yeah. I thought he had dead-legged me.
Yep.
And so my big fear was I don't want to be laying on the ground and then, everyone in the stands gets real quiet and the coaches run out there and then the guy pops up and walks off and you're like, he was fine the whole time. So I was like, I need to get up fast. And I remember thinking, I got to hop up. And so I go to get up and before I could mess with the leg, the trainer like pushed me on the ground, lay down. I was like, no. Like I was like, no, I'm fine. And then when he put his hand on my knee, I just started like screaming cuss words. It was so painful. And then I remember him saying, we got to get the ambulance on the field. I don't want him to go through the pain that Ed did. And I remember Ed was a kid who shattered his leg the week before on that same field. And we saw him pick his knee up and his foot stay on the ground. It was one of those. And we were all like, oh, God. So when he said my name with Ed's, I was like, oh no.
I'm in Ed's category. I don't want to be in Ed's category.
This is horrible. It's horrible.
Don't you lump me in with that loser?
It was bad deal, man.
Oh, gosh. So that's how you found out because you realized I'm like Ed. I'm with Ed.
He came to visit me. I have pictures.
He did not.
Me and Ed. It was a sad deal.
Got an Ed tattoo.
But,
oh, my gosh.
It was in that hospital room that I was like, I just lost the thing that mattered the most. And I remember laying there going, so what do I have left? And it was a powerful moment for me. I felt like the Lord was like, what you have is me and your life's about me. And he and I had some things we had to work out, some bitterness I had to process. But at that point I was like, it wasn't a call to ministry, like, and I will thus be a preacher. It was like, I belong to the Lord.
Yeah, right.
And that was a significant moment for me.
And how old were you?
Sophomore in high school.
Wow.
Well, I hope that encourages everyone listening because here Ben is on the back end describing two of the worst things of his entire life, breaking his back, breaking his leg. And yet look how he is with gratitude in his eyes and heart. You're describing what amount to two of the most important movements of your life.
Yeah.
So they don't feel like that in the midst of them, but here's taking heart to those who are going through hell today.
That's good, Levi.
Keep walking because it just may turn out to be the turning point, right?
Yes, man. We used to do that with our staff, Levi. We would have them draw pictures. And we said, don't draw pictures of like the things that are meaningful. It was 3 to 5 of shaping moments in your life that made you who you are. And, when you tell people to do that and don't give them a lot of time, sometimes they're like surprisingly honest. We have them draw these little pictures. And inevitably 3 out of 5 are of really hard things. And you realize some of the best things God has to forge into us means go through the fire and through the hammer to forge you into something useful and strong. And it does help you in the moment if you can keep that in mind. Oh, that's what he does. It's why I read a lot of leadership books now or biographies, because you see God can do good things through very hard circumstances. So don't give up. And reading biographies over the last 2 years is probably what's kept me sane.
Yeah, great.
Up here.
I do want to talk about that more, your reading and just even how you approach that and make time for that. But let me just say just real quickly here how grateful I am for you sharing this message, this book message. It is a well-written book. Yeah. I have learned that a good pastor does not automatically a good author make. I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody, but every one who's a great speaker doesn't automatically translate to the written page well. But you are a great writer. You can tell it's clear. You agonize over this. It doesn't sound like I'm listening to a sermon transcribed. You're artful, your use of story. 1 minute you're quoting Jonathan Edwards and the next it's Floyd Mayweather. There's very practical, tangible lessons. It's a very good book. So I cannot encourage people enough who are dealing with anxiety in their lives. I'm sure that's a big portion of those you kind of had in mind, because you give a kind of a way out of a life that's inviting anxiety into the story, really, and preventing future burnout, future, flame out. So I commend you for the work. I know personally you slogged through years of labor to get this out. So thank you for writing it.
Man, I appreciate that, brother, because, well, maybe you don't know. I mean, you inspire me, the two of you, the ministry you do, how sincere and pastoral it is, inspires me, man. So that means a lot. I'm really grateful. So thank you.
Heck yeah.
We like y'all.
I think I think one of my favorite things, and I hadn't seen it before, was the 3 rings. And I know people are going to read it and hear the whole thing, but just kind of a quick thumbnail sketch of the ring on the inside you want to avoid. The ring on the middle is the slipping towards it. And then the outside ring is where most people probably forget to put their energy. Kind of talk about that for a sec.
Yeah. So I befriended a guy that had a terrible childhood and became an addict and made some very destructive life choices to, like many do, we go to something to numb the pain, to escape intolerable emotions. And often the things we go to that we think are life enhancing end up stealing life from us. It's, we replay the Garden of Eden over and over again. We think this is going to give us life. It actually takes it. And he had just been through, some really hard things, but had gone through rehab and had come out a serene, wise, amazing, beautiful human being. And I remember sitting with him and he was showing me this target he made while he was at this rehabilitation place. And the center of the target was, here are all the activities that would constitute a breach of my sobriety. And, that's sort of obvious when you're talking about like alcohol or pills. It can be different sometimes for people when their addictions are maybe more acceptable or hit, or like pornography or anxiety, some of the obsessive impulses people can have. But he took some time to put in the inner circle. If I do these behaviors, I know I've broken my sobriety. I've lost it.
It moves the marker back right to out of days sent goes back to 0.
Yes, exactly. And then the ring right outside of it was, these are the things I do that are the ritualization before this, the habits I'm doing, parts of town I start driving through, thoughts I start thinking, places I start going online, that they don't breach sobriety, but I'm flirting with it. And these are the moments that are supposed to instantly trigger a phone call. Like when these things start to sound like a good idea, I know I'm no longer thinking clearly. So he had a real kind of detailed list. And I remember as he was talking me through this, I'm like, so that's the thing you don't want to do. That's the thing before the thing you don't want to do. What's the next ring? The thing you do before the thing you do before the thing you do that you don't want to do? I'm like, God, rehab's exhausting. And he was like, no, that outer ring is the stuff you do for fun that has no sorrow added to it. And he said, what I realized was I was going to this destructive thing to escape pain or to get out of stress, but it stole from me other fun. And so when I stop doing this destructive thing, I can go, well, what am I going to replace it with that's constructive, not destructive? And he said, so try it. And I tried it.
Well, I love the part where you are honest enough to admit that at first, your first take, you only literally wrote the word reading books down in your outer ring. You didn't have much there.
Well, it was great because I love his honesty. Like, I love people like this. They're brutally honest with you, but deeply love you. So he's never shaming me. But I remember he looked at mine and he was like, hey, man, I don't even want to talk about these first 2 rings. He said, I want you to see how pathetic your 3rd ring is. He's like, you don't even know what you do for fun. You don't even know what you like to do.
Yeah.
Your outer ring sucks.
You don't even know. He was like, I want you to figure out what you like to do. This is the only ring I want to talk about.
Wow.
I'm like,
Well, and you
That's so
seem to have
good.
done a pretty good job of it. You from your hang gliding to your obstacle course, your doll thrashing to your, you've filled up your ring pretty good.
Doll thrashing
I'm
for
trying.
fun.
Yeah, dumpster
I'm
diving.
trying. Yeah, I'm trying.
That's very helpful. And so it's like, that's one specific thing. We obsess over, how do I stay out of the inner ring? And this is like, well, hey, what are you going to do with all that time on your hands? You got to have something to fill, nature hates a vacuum, right?
Yeah. The human machine will seek pleasure. You are a pleasure seeking machine, and you will either consciously move towards something constructive, or the devil will offer you something destructive. So you have to decide, where am I going to go? And if you can aim it at something constructive, I mean, you do that. I mean, you're an inspiration in that. The two of you, you look up and you're like, man, now he's jumping in ice water. Now he's playing tennis. Like,
Levi loves pain.
Well, we both have books out that have the word war in the title, Ben. So you and I, no wonder we're good friends,
It's like every book I've written, I'm like, I'm going to write a book on dating. You mean like the one Levi just wrote? Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Except better.
I'm going to write a book on the spiritual life. You mean like the one Jenny just wrote? Yeah, like that.
It's just why we are such good friends. We see eye to eye.
Yes.
Although, after you've declared war, now you need to learn how to rest so you can continue at war. That's the other side
I'm writing
of
the
it.
sequels is what's happening.
Well, and you know what? I'm reading this going, I love it, because I think we can too often end up in the extremes of one or the other.
Yeah.
But you're saying to have that sustained war, we have to find the rhythms of rest. And man, I learned that the hard way. I'll just be completely candid. After Lindy went to heaven, part of Jenny and I's coping mechanism, maybe me more than her, but probably both of us to some degree, I'll say, was to throw ourselves entirely, to an unhealthy degree in some ways, into ministry. It's like, we can't get Lindy back, but we can make the devil pay. I love that in principle. The God brings good out of bad. But to an unhealthy degree, it's yes to every opportunity, constant busyness, constant going. And, we racked up a bill in the following, 9 years that eventually came due. We had the same sort of, like you mentioned, the body does keep score. And so you must find a sustainable tempo, or you will not make it long-term.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's what helps me is just if you can not beat yourself up with the shame, you can start thinking strategically and go, how do I make it long-term? What do I need to change? And rest is critical if I want to keep making war on the difficult things in life and pushing back darkness and making a difference, that I have to figure this rhythm out. For the sake of me, Paul told Timothy, be a student of yourself so that you may save yourself and your hearers. And I remember that verse got me, where he was like, Timothy, be a student of you, not just for you, for the sake of everyone who's keying off of you. You need to get this right. Be attentive to yourself. So it's helped me to do that.
We're 54 minutes in and we haven't talked about Donna Stewart yet. It almost seems like a national crime. Like we've committed a crime of epic proportions that she hasn't come into the conversation yet.
Well, next time we should do a conversation with us
Honestly,
because she's one of my favorite people in the world.
Oh my gosh. We should have, that was a massive miss on our part.
Well,
she is picking up my children.
Yes, the
right
three.
I'm not saying that it hasn't been wonderful, because this has been wonderful, and you are also one of my most favorite people in the world. But your wife is special to me.
Oh man, well, same. Like I said, we love you guys, and Donna is.
What is Donna up to these days?
She is constantly building and making. She is a maker and creator of things. So her COVID coping was she built a fire pit, she built a playground, she built a tree house for the children.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
I did not help at all. Yeah, I didn't at any level. And then
you said that Donna's outer ring in the book. You said you listed your outer ring, you listed Donna's outer ring, and then you were like, and I do not like any of those things.
No, not even close.
And that's okay, right?
It is. It is okay.
I mean, I'm asking for
a
friend.
We don't have to share everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she also, writes. She wrote this poetry and put it to music, and she was like, I don't know what to do with this, and I'm like, give it away. You wrote it because you were processing with the Lord. It's beautiful. Give it away. And so online, on Instagram, she's just was like, here. And it's been so neat, man, just to see people come back to her and like, this is moving to me. This is so helpful. And that's meant a lot to her because it's just, she processes with creativity. And she's so creative. And so she's having a Donna Renaissance right now, man. I mean, she's just
Donna-sance.
Donna-sance.
Oh,
I love it
really
so
great.
much. That's so inspiring.
Yeah, they're
She
gonna
built a
figure out she's
treehouse.
lot
She
cooler
built
than me
a
pretty
playground. She built a
soon.
fire
With a zip
pit.
line, bro. With a zip line.
Dang.
Be careful.
I
with
did
those
not
zip
help
lines.
her with that either.
Homemade zip lines. That's some YouTube fail territory right there. Some zip line fail.
That's true.
Ooh, some bad ones. How long is it? Can you go on it, or is it just the children?
I can. We set it kind of low. So if an adult goes on it, you got to have some core strength. You got to pick your rear up or you're going to hit the ground. But yeah, you do exit the treehouse. You know, it starts with.
It's like Home Alone status pretty well, right?
Yeah.
Or he went into the treehouse.
Mm-hmm.
You're leaving the treehouse.
Yeah, but I mean, they're high. Yeah. We didn't want our kids to fall from great heights. My brother had one and the kid broke his arm off it. And I'm like, let's put our kids in like knee scrape territory, not in arm break.
Good idea.
territory.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we started, you mentioned that you had a story about Hannah that you wanted to share with us.
Which Daisy says hello to Sparrow, by the way. They had a good time on our daddy-daughter outing.
They had so much fun. So we had that picture and I put on it, the Stuarts love the Luskos. And Donna was like, hey, so Hannah walked up the other day and goes, what's a Lusko? And Donna goes, Celescos. She goes, let's go.
Let's go.
Like, what? So now every time like y'all have come up like, oh, I'm doing this podcast, they're like, let's go. Let's go. Like we can't say your name right anymore over here.
Let's
That's
go.
funny. We did have a brief phase where we had different takes on the hey, it's the Luskos. Torrin Wells gave us a couple quality jingles. So this is now the Stewart contribution. Hey, it's
that's our
Let's
contribution.
Go.
Let's go. Hey, I got to tell you this too. This came in today, man. I'm going to send this to you, but it came in today. I got to tell you something. So we started talking about special forces. There's a guy, Daniel Winkler, that forges knives for tier 1 operators. So these knives are amazing. You got to watch his videos. The dude is like stabbing these knives through like engine blocks. I mean, he makes these incredible knives.
Dang.
They're very expensive, but he made this little bitty knife. Let's see this in this picture. I'm gonna hold it up. It's this little knife.
Daniel Winkler knives.
Daniel Winkler, not Henry Winkler. That's the Fonz. Daniel Winkler makes
Daniel
knives for
Winkler
Special Forces guys.
knives.
Wow.
Special
But I
Forces
love
tier 1. Is that the knife right there?
This is the little knife I bought for you. I'm going to mail this to you. It just came
Are
in
you
today.
serious?
It's yeah. It's got
Hold it
a
up
bottle
higher. I
opener
can't
on
see
the
behind
back.
the camera. Oh my gosh.
You see it?
Oh
It's got a
my
bottle opener.
gosh.
Yeah, wow.
There's some danger because it's sharp, but I just, I know bottle opening and you have had a history.
We've got a
So I
complicated
bought you I thought it's the rest and the war right
Bro.
here, man.
Wow. For those of you
Hey,
who are
that's
listening,
I'm
amazing.
going to watch this for you.
Bro,
I saw
that
this
is-
and I'm like, I'm getting him that.
that is incredible. Thank you so much.
Aw.
Jeez.
Tier 1 bottle opener, bro.
I'm looking at this guy's knives here. The one you have in your hand, the ones on the screen here. This is insane.
Wow.
How did you come across this? I mean, you do live in DC, so you're in the world. I mean, I realize you technically probably have like, top tier clearance and all that.
Yeah, he makes knives and axes for SEALs. And so one of the guys was showing me his. I'm like, I got to get one. And then you just go down the rabbit hole watching his videos. Like the graphics are atrocious. But then you watch this guy with these knives. I'm just like,
Stabbing
I'm all
it through
about
an
this guy's
engine block?
knives.
So he's disabling someone's car in the field.
Well, what's funny is you watch it and some people are like, this is such macho ridiculousness. I'm like, yes, but if you're stuck in a car, you want that guy.
Yeah, right.
Who this is not a danger. This is a lifesaver.
Because it's like
Not this.
this
You need a
could
bigger
stab
knife
through
than
the
this,
engine
but-
block of a car, and you're like, it fails to occur to me that there will never be a situation where I would need such a thing. However, it's like
don't.
I obviously need that.
But I 100%. Yeah.
Here's my credit card number.
You're going to go down the well, dude.
Yeah.
Daniel Winkler.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so
I'm
I
sorry.
don't know if I actually got to tell you this after Passion, but your message was really
So
powerful, and really one of the ones that stands out. They were all incredible, but one that stands out in my mind, I think I am a visual learner, so that was very helpful to have an illustration. But the part where, because you had your wife throw tennis balls at you. So you were just surrounded by tennis balls, first of all, which I broke my ankle by running and stepping on a tennis ball. So the whole time I was actually kind of like,
PTSD.
Okay, he might step on that one. Okay, he really needs to be careful.
Well, because they never moved them, but you kept running through them all the time.
And so, but the part where you put the tennis balls in the glass box that was filled with water, and when you were saying that God wants us to release our worries, we so often want to press down our worries and press down our anxieties, but that whole point was letting you said, these are my notes actually from your message. Wow. You said, let your anxieties arise. Don't suppress your anxieties, let them rise. And that was just such a powerful picture and just moment where I could almost feel the whole room, like everyone's shoulders just kind of relax a little bit. Like, okay, I don't have to suppress these things down. I don't have to try to hide them. I can just let them rise to the Lord. And so I just wanted to thank you for your message and for that moment in particular. That was just profound for me.
Man. Yeah, thank you, Jenny. You know what strikes me is, Jesus, it says he looked at the crowd and they were harassed and helpless. And you think about those words, like harassed means someone's constantly messing, they won't stop messing with you. And helpless means you lack the resources to make it stop. And so he's looking at the crowd and he sees you're harassed, you're helpless. And it says he had compassion. And so he taught them. And I just love that. I'm like, when the Lord looks at this generation and sees how harassed and helpless, how anxious we are, he never shames them for it. He has compassion and he says, cast your cares upon the Lord. He cares for you. Let your requests be made unto God. Like he's telling you, these things are going to be an impediment to you fulfilling what God built you to do today. But rather than shame you for carrying them, I want you to give them to me. Hand them to me, and then let me release you to be a blessing to your coworkers rather than being caught up in anxiety. Be a blessing to your kids rather than being short with them because you're stressed. Like, so I have to do that every morning if I want to function as who he made me to be.
Beautiful. Well, it's so helpful. Gosh.
Were you worried about falling on the tennis balls? Were you keeping your mind, like keeping them in your head?
I was so aware of I will kick away every tennis ball in the area I will stand and preach because I do not want to fall on this stage.
In front of 60,000 of your closest friends.
Lord, let me catch the first ball, and Lord, let me not fall over.
That is hilarious.
He heard my cry.
He did.
Yeah, it was a really great visual. Just dealing with all the things coming at you and having no amount of arms that can possibly keep track of it. It was a very good
I did it
visual.
for the love of the kids, man, because I did not want, the whole time I was like, why am I doing this? I'm speaking here, like, keep it simple, bro. Just say an illustration. Why am I having my wife throw these things at me? Like, what am I? I'm like, I'm doing it to try to help people feel overwhelmed and then see there's a way to handle that. But the whole time I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. This is a huge mistake. I'm about to be a cautionary tale.
That was so
hilarious.
good.
Memorable, sticky. And I was going to say, you obviously read widely. It's in your outer ring. It remains in your outer ring. And you're a great storyteller, and you're constantly, your own life is you are very good at crafting stories from the pulpit, from the written page, as well as, curating, whether it's endurance and the Shackleton, which was a beautiful picture of the Holy Spirit, this Gulf Stream wind. When you're reading, what is your system or method, or do you have one that you can articulate other than just, I try and remember them, for preserving good stuff you come across as you read it without disrupting the flow of, I'm actually sitting here reading this book, enjoying it, but I might want to use this later. Do you have any system for that?
Good question.
Yeah, probably not a good enough one. I know some people have like tabs they keep on a computer or notes or whatever. I take notes in a book while I'm reading it. I'll pick a subject I think is interesting, and I don't necessarily pick it for illustrations, but inevitably they become them. But if I hit something I know I want to remember, I write it at the top of the page, like real clearly what it is and why it matters, so that when I'm done with the book, I can go back and find those pages, and I'm basically like leaving breadcrumbs for myself to find again the stories. And so when I'm done with a book, I'll go back and kind of harvest them, you know. But
do you put them into like a computer program or something on your phone, note on your phone?
that's the thing. I know you do.
Yes.
Not perfectly, but I do a similar thing with the things, and I always dog ear the bottom of that page, because otherwise, even trying to flip through and find the page that has stuff written on it.
But now how, I don't.
Oh yeah, that's a new pro tip.
Like you take a picture of a page and then you highlight it in your phone, and then it actually just copies and pastes it to where like you want to save it. So you don't have to retype it or anything.
That
is
a
really
definite
amazing.
new upgrade to the Apple software. Have you seen this, Ben?
I can't tell you how helpless I am with stuff like that. No.
Me too.
So on the phone,
whenever I get administrative help, I tell them like, you're about to meet a toddler. I was like,
That's funny.
I have a very
I'm with you.
So on the new,
skills.
like the camera app has OCR capability, basically. So just your native camera on your phone, you go to any text, and then these 3 lines within parentheses will show up on the bottom right. And then
I've seen that.
when you hit that, everything that's text all of a sudden becomes editable. And then you can go and hit select all and change what's selected and hit paste. So you can then,
and it doesn't like it right now. It did also the notes that I wrote at the bottom
it'll get
of
your
the
own
page,
handwriting.
which
It's
is really
imperfect,
cool.
but it's definitely better than not.
That is.
Anyways.
So then you go
just did it
what
for the
are
first time
extracts
the other day.
now hit what you extracted and hit select all. You can copy it. So you can go back through at the end and grab, Evernote's got an OCR tool as well, which can scan, editable text. So my old solution used to be to grab every page that had something on it and put it into an Evernote doc, but now you can literally just copy and paste it using your camera.
So cool.
This is blowing my mind.
It is a
I
very
don't
good
do
thing.
stuff like this. Yeah.
Thank you,
thanks.
Apple. Thank you, Tim Cook. Thank you to all the people involved in that.
Man. Okay. No, I write my thoughts and go, I hope I find that piece of paper again.
Same.
Okay, so Texan comes into DC. You started church with your wife and team, and you guys are there. You've told me kind of privately you wanted to get your arms around the city, so you made it your goal to really explore, but also really to read. Like you were telling me, you read Washington's biography, Grant's biography. Like you were just really trying to get a sense of the city.
Yeah. That's I had a friend. Actually, when I moved to College Station, I had a friend, African American, and I told him, in College Station, Bryan, College Station are 2 towns that touch each other. And I was like, roughly speaking, College Station is majority white, Bryan's majority black. I said, I just don't know why that is. And he was like, well, every place has a story. And if you live in a place, it's probably good for you to learn its story. And that was such a simple thing to say. And I'm like, yeah, I do I love stories, and I want to know the story of where I live. And, Washington, D.C. is our nation's story. And so, yeah, that's the way I kind of help make sense of the world, is read the story. So I've loved that, and just I'm on my 2nd history book of the city itself. And then, reading all these biographies of leaders in the city, from Grant and Lincoln and Washington and Frederick Douglass, and just trying to get my head around it. It's been so helpful and inspiring when you're here to walk around and
totally. Gosh.
So I love that kind of stuff. And the weird thing is, you just watch all these people get punished. I mean, their lives were terrible. Like at Washington, there's one point where it's like all the newspapers were partisan. It was very hard to learn the truth. And then disease broke out and was killing people in the city. And I'm like, wait, what? And you're reading this and I'm like, oh, sounds weirdly familiar. I was like, well, they made it through it. So
and you had never heard of that breakout, right? I mean, it's like, oh, wow, they'd gone through things we never even heard about. So will this be a blip on the radar? 100 years from now, is this the Spanish flu that people only find out about when there's a 2120 pandemic,
Yeah. Yeah. How often this has happened. That's the thing. We get surprised by things that are very common, like disease, common, war, common, lying, common, death, very common.
Death, exceedingly common. Speaking of death.
That is such a good point.
You tell this great story about your...
Did you say speaking of death?
Speaking of death.
Okay.
You tell this great story about meeting your in-laws for the first time and involved dressing a corpse. This is a story that...
You must know.
No, this is a real story. I've heard you use this.
Yeah. I couldn't for years. So I met Donna it was time to go meet the parents. Her dad's a mortician. And I went and met him.
Is he
and
still?
No,
Oh,
he's not.
he was
so
then.
now I can tell the story.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was a mortician. And then I met her stepbrother, and he was a gravedigger. And just what you would think. I mean, the guy was like 6 foot, a lot, bald, huge, tatted up. I'm like, so what do you do? And he's like, well, I dig graves out of them. I'm like, yeah, that feels right. That resonates.
I'm with you.
And
Central
so
Casting called. They
house.
said it was a perfect fit. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm sitting in the living room with them. So I'm like, so talk me through it. How long does it take to dig one? Trying to come up with something to say. And they get this phone call that this guy had, passed away in a car wreck, and his family wanted to go see the body, and they're taking it to and so it became an emergency, like, this is happening now. And they're like, we have to go. And it was like, got quiet. I'm like, yeah, okay, let's go. So we jumped in the hearse. He drove a hearse for his car. So we jump in the hearse, and the three of us are driving down there. And it was like going to a funeral. The way down there, we were silent, like didn't say a word. And then we got there and walk in the room, and the gravedigger brother knew the guy. So he was like, I can't be in here, and walked out. And Dad was like, well, we have to dress him, and I can't lift him. So, and then the big dude's like, I can't do it either. I'm like, wait, what?
Wait, I'm not,
like,
I'm not qualified.
2 out of 3 are professionals here.
And one of them just left.
Yeah. So they both left. And so I'm in the room with this, man's body. And then the dad comes in, is like, hey, we got to dress him. So I had to, pick this body up and get all the clothes on it and dress this body. And then we leave or walk out into the room. And when we walk out, now they're laughing at me, like me having to it's first rodeo, And so then it's like, we're talking about that. And he was like, actually that guy, like, he kind of looked like you, your head's the same shape. I'm like, what do you stop? Like and so then the whole drive back, we're just laughing about, like, not about obviously this person's situation, but it's kind of like, all the stress of that moment is over, and they're just making fun of me about it. And so it ended up like we became friends. But right as we got back, his dad was like, hey man, like, you can't tell anybody about that. I'm like, what?
You don't have your mortuary license. Yes.
I'm like, I tell stories for, oh man. So I just had to sit on it.
You were sworn to secrecy for decades.
For decades.
That is a terrible.
That's how I got in with the in-laws.
There's proof that you love Donna, because I'd have run for the hills, man. That is some freaky family. You're like, you know what, guys? I'm going to see myself out. I will find a taxi to take me to the airport.
Oh, wow.
Well, I love, moments like that are fun when you're like, so what do you do? I dig graves. Okay, Here we are. We're in a moment. Whatever happens next, we're making history here.
Yes.
Let's do it. Let's do this.
You did give me a great tip when we were hanging out in DC with our daughters. You and I haven't got them yet, but you were telling me, and I know not everybody is in love with Harry Potter, but our kids all like it a lot. And you were telling me about you guys finding the illustrated version that you guys were working through together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So pro tip to the families looking for a fun family activity.
Oh man, yeah. So we read them all. We do story time at night, and Dad does the voices and all the drama. So we made it through the whole series during the pandemic.
Wow.
So we got deep into it. And there's multiple retellings of the Christian story. I always knew the big one, Harry at the end. But even in the second book, he descends to the depths to destroy the serpent and the evil behind it to set Virginia free. And you're like, oh my gosh. So, they tend to steal our stories. I mean, she told you later, like, where's she going?
Well, and she pointed the Bible verses that were her arc in her mind. There was like 3 Bible verses she had in her mind that moved the whole story on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
so my kids aren't like,
specifically the illustrated one. You were saying that there's an illustrated set. I still haven't come across
these beautiful illustrated ones that you can like open these little doors and pull these little and Sparrow, my sweet one, is just captured by the magic of it. So
who has chosen
Hannah,
Slytherin?
I took her to the Harry Potter store.
Slytherin as her house. By the way, that tells you what you need to know about Sparrow.
Yeah.
She's in Team Slytherin.
And that one's Hannah's in Team Slytherin, and I took her to the Harry Potter store, and she was like, I want Voldemort's wand. I'm like, what? I'm like, no one, look, like, no, what?
Let's be
like,
clear
no.
here.
No. And so we walked around the store. I'm like, I need you to think about that. And then left, and I'm like, the elder wand is here, the strongest wand. We went back and forth.
Yeah. And
I was like, babe, he like murdered people. Like that's an evil. And then she goes, Dad, I can make it good.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if I should go with that or not. I was conflicted. I was like, that's kind of is that a story? Is that something meaningful? So I called Donna and she was like, absolutely not. Buy her the elder wand and walk out of there. I'm like, okay, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. That is funny. Well, Ben, thank you for today.
Oh, Ben.
We will get this scheduled to come back around with Donna and do a little double date on here. We also are going to have you come preach this message at Fresh Life. We want it in our church, in our hearts, but I can't recommend the book enough. I know the book website is where we were just there. Let's see that tab. The book website for Rest in War is, click that. restandwar.com. That's easy enough.
Pretty direct. Yeah, man. Well, hey, you came like in the least fun time to come to DC and preached. That was when we were like, could only have 50 people in the room, separated in hazmat suits, couldn't make eye contact. And you flew into the crazy and preached to my people. You're a hero, man.
Well, I went right from there. I flew straight from there to Florida, and it was spring break, and they hadn't heard about the pandemic yet. So it was a very, very shocking experience. I remember going like, there's 3 masks on the barista, and she's giving me the Heisman, keep me away from you. And then in Florida, it was March Madness, man. They were all about it. But we love you guys, love your church, your building, and are grateful for your voice and the way God is using you. So thank you.
Thanks, brother. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. And be sure to swing by LeviLusko.com to see what's going on in our world, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. In the meantime, we would love to connect with you on social media. Jenny and Levi Lusko, out.